Well, hello and welcome to our flight in the SF260 from Jersey to Guernsey. So down at the bottom right of the map, we are roughly at the eastern end of the runway at Jersey, and we're going to make a short flight to the north and then land heading to the west at Guernsey. So let's switch over to X-plane. So here we are at the Aero Club parking at Jersey. Let's to have a look at the airport overview. Just pop up and have a look. There's the main terminal to the west. Bit of an overcast day. Clouds are at about 2700. We'll be flying 2,000 feet today. And just look over the runway. We'll be taking off on runway 26 to the west, then turning north, and then turning west again for our approach into Guernsey, which is also an east-west runway. Let's have a look at the Marchetti. We're in the cockpit here. Everything is powered down. I think we're pretty full on the fuel and almost ready to go, but we'll just have a quick look outside the aircraft first and check that our navigation lights are operating. So let's put the battery on, and we should see the electric horizon on the right start to spin up. There it goes. The main horizon above us is vacuum driven, and that won't start moving until the engine is running. Check our gear transit light, stall warning light. Let's pop outside the aircraft. There you can see our right wingtip lights working, the rotating beacon below and on the tail working, and the left navigation light also, and the white tail position light. So we're all good there. Thought I'd have a look at the propeller. Let's see if we can maneuver the vision to have a quick look at the prop. Cut away of the Lycoming engine there momentarily. And if you look down on the prop, you can see there is a constant speed propeller, variable pitch. You can see that it can rotate within this hub arrangement, and that's how the pitch has changed. So there's actually two individual blades with a special gearbox driven by oil pressure that can allow the blades to change their pitch to maintain the set or commanded RPM. Quick look at our aircraft. Very nice machine, very nicely simulated. High visibility canopy. Really a terrific little tour, a very fast, light aircraft. Alright, let's jump inside. So we've got nav beacon on, the parking brake is on. We'll set our mixture to rich. Make sure the avionics master is off. We'll open the throttle an inch. Check the prop is clear. We're going to press the fuel boost, and you'll see the fuel will rise, fuel pressure will rise up to about 5 psi. Alright, so we're now good for a start. Now I'll bring this back to about 1100 RPM and just lean the mixture off a bit. Bring the alternator on and the avionics. You can see the vacuum horizon is level now. Let's have a look at our airport details. These are all the air traffic in the area, and this is us sitting here to the east of the runway, southeast. Taking off a runway 26, 274 feet our elevation. We're not going to use air traffic control today, so we'll ignore the comms frequencies. There's our sky conditions, 2700, will be below that. Winds from the west, 15 knots, and the area QNH is 1005. So we'll set this altimeter to 1005. And also the standby unit on the co-pilot side. Oops. There we are. Close the canopy. And we'll set our takeoff flaps. Just below 20 degrees. Just going to set up a couple of things on the radio comms. So Guernsey VOR DME is 109.4. In fact, we can take a shortcut here using the menus. We have a look at our destination. 109.4. We can tune the navigation gear just by these mouse clicks. A little bit of a cheat, but we'll do that for now. And there's the east-west runway. We're going to be landing from the east using the instrument landing system, which we're going to tune separately now. While we're doing all this, we're just watching the cylinder head temps come up into range. And just confirming we have full wing tanks, and we've got 3/4 tip tanks. 7.5 hours on this airframe. Okay, so let's just tune the instrument landing system for runway 27. It's 108.1. Oops. Zero 8.1. And the VORDME is 109.4. I'm not sure what happened there. And we'll just put a direct 2 in here if I can do that. I've got an old waypoint in here, and frankly I just not quite sure how to clear that at this stage, but with a direct waypoint it's going to EGJB. So there's our initial map, just for a visual reference. We're at JJ and we're going to JB up here, so we'll just keep this on in the background, but we won't really be using the GPS today. Okay, well, let's get our brakes off. We're going to keep the boost on. We're going to switch to the other tank now. Let's roll forward. Again, we're not using air traffic control today. We're just going for it. Here we come up to the Alpha 1 holding point at runway 26. We're going to hold here and do a quick run up. Uh, 1800 RPM. And let's go to the left mag. 50 RPM drop back to both. Right mag, 50 RPM drop, both in step and 50 well within tolerance. And back down to the idle. We get a good idle, about 700 RPM. Alright, let's just quickly set our heading bug. 260, this runway is 263 is the actual alignment of the runway here at Jersey. And the approaching runway into Guernsey is 268, so we'll just set that up on the OBS. 270. 68, and this one, my mistake, should be about here. Okay, so it's time for our wingtip strobes. Pitot heat on and landing light. There's our wingtip strobes now, and nose landing light, canopy shut, flaps are set. And last item in the cockpit is just to look at our trim. Okay, just bring our trim back to our takeoff position here. Alright, so temps and pressures are in the green. We're good to go. Let's ease in the throttle. Full throttle now, and 70 knots, off we go. There's the positive rate on the VSI. Gear up. Have a look outside. There's the international terminal. And now we can reduce our manifold pressure to 25 inches with the throttle. 25 inches of mercury in the vacuum tube, and the RPM can come back to 2500. Okay, and now we're going through 95 knots. We can bring our takeoff flap up, and now we can turn onto our heading of north. And we can actually pop the autopilot on at this point in time, and that'll hold our pitch and roll. The pitch is giving us 110 knots, nice fast shallow climb, and we're approaching our cruise altitude. Should be able to snag our altitude now at 2,000 feet. And I'll just engage heading mode. Just roll through the heading a little bit there, and now I've reselected it using the heading mode, and it's going to target north as per the heading bug set here. Now that we're in our cruise, we can bring our RPM back to 2400 RPM. Bring the manifold pressure to 24 as well. I won't bother leaning out because we're running at 2000 and a fairly short trip. Landing light can come off, boost pump can come off. Here we are. Alright, back inside the cockpit. This is our distance to Guernsey on the distance measuring equipment here, 17.5 miles. What we can do is anticipate the turn onto final approach by giving us a 15-degree lead off, and as that bar centers we should then switch to approach mode. So we're now looking tuned to the Omni beacon on the inbound course of 285. And that'll give us a little bit of an anticipation of the turn on to final of 268. Now this is quite a hard aircraft to slow down, so we need to anticipate, and perhaps when we're within 10 miles we want to start slowing that down. We can see our turns coming in now, and indeed we should really start our turn to final. And what I'm going to do now is switch to the instrument landing system. There we go. And then we'll put the Omni on 268. I think I had it set wrong before. 268. And you can see the center line is to our right still, so we've got a small intercept set up. I'm now going to bring our manifold pressure back to about 16, which is 15 is as low as you can go without the gear horn going off. Okay, see the RPM's being maintained at 2400 by the prop fining off. As we descend shortly, the manifold pressure will keep creeping up as the atmospheric density increases, so we're going to have to keep pulling that back. We've got 13.9 miles to run. "10 miles to run, we should be 3,000 feet, so about 7 miles to run is about 2,000 feet. So we need to start our descent by then. We've just come into the flap range of speed just below 125 knots. So we're going to fly over these islands, and just in the haze in the distance is actually Guernsey. You can actually see the airport lights of the runway environment now just in the distance. It's 11 or so miles away. This is our glide slope indicator here on the right of the HSI, so that's going to start dropping down as we intercept the glide slope from below. It's a 3-degree descent profile, about 5.2%. Standard approach glide slope. This represents our localizer, the extended runway center line, which will start to move towards the middle of the CDI. And it's just started to move now. We're 10 miles out. We would have contacted tower by now. We'll put the boost pump landing light on. We'll switch back to the other tank. Here's our runway in the distance to the top left of the screen. 2,000 is the platform altitude for this approach when you look at the charts. We're really just doing a visual approach today with instrument landing system as backup, as guidance for demonstration purposes. Right, we're 8 miles out now. I'm going to go to 20 degrees of flap. And we're now within the white arc, so we can go for gear and more flap at any stage. Is our localizer coming in? So if we press approach mode on the autopilot, it should capture that. It says approach here. This has a coupled autopilot. It should turn on to final any moment now. There it goes. And we will put the heading bug on that heading just in case we want to disconnect from approach mode and move into heading mode. Standard practice. At 90 knots, 7 miles out. This is about the time we'd put the gear out in a 737 or any airliner for that matter. We can leave it a little bit later in this aircraft. You can see the glide slope starting to come in. So usually when the glide slope comes alive is the time to start thinking about the gear, and around the 5 mile mark in this aircraft would be pretty fine and dandy. Here's our runway head over the nose. Autopilot is flying the approach at this point in time. That'll be disconnected soon. There's the glide slope, 1 dot deviation. We're going to go for gear down. There's our 3 greens. And we can keep the manifold pressure where it is. And we'll bring 30 degrees of flap. All on autopilot other than the throttle, which is being throttle and propeller manually controlled. So for 90 knots of ground speed, we've got about probably 85 at this stage with a bit of a headwind. You'd be looking at about 400 feet per minute descent rate to maintain profile, and that's exactly what the autopilot's giving us. You can see we're on glide slope here, and the localizer CDI is also centered, so we're right on, bang on approach, and we've got 4 miles to go. So let's go for full flap now. 50 degrees of flap on this aircraft. Very generous. Okay, just last checks. We have got our fuel switched over. We have landing light, boost pump on. Gear is down. 3 greens. You can see to the left we have the PAPI, the Precision Approach Path Indicator system. 4 lights, 2 are white, 2 are red, which means we're right on profile. If we get high, they'll go 3 white. If we get low, 3 red, and then to 4 red. But we're on approach under autopilot guidance, so there's no reason to believe we're going to move off path. What will happen though is I will go to manual flight momentarily, and that's when we may start wobbling a bit. So 90 knots. The approach speed for this aircraft over the fence is about 87 knots. So we're looking pretty good all round. Just a bit of chop there on approach. 2.5 miles out. It's 87 knots. Alright, I'm going to take the autopilot out now. Any wobbles are strictly due to my inputs now. Let's go to full RPM or fine pitch on the prop. Now the throttle control will move the RPM because the propeller's on the pitch limit. It can't fine off anymore. So if we reduce the manifold pressure, the RPM will reduce now. There's the main apron to the left there at Guernsey. We're a little bit high at 3 whites, but we do have a few trees below us, so I'm gonna go with that. Bit of a slope on this runway, as you can see. Some hot air balloons off to the right. Very busy apron off to the left. .87 knots. There we are. Bring the flap up. And we'll just clear the holding point. Strobe, landing light off. Lean off a bit. Let's set 1100 or so we don't foul the plugs and go and find somewhere to park. I'm getting blown around by the wind a bit here. Alright, let's set that parking brake. Avionics off. Boost pump off. And now we can go mixture lean. Well folks, welcome to Guernsey. Hope you've enjoyed the flight. And we'll see you next time.